Welcome back. I wish I could roll my R's and things like that. I cannot do that. Welcome back to
Welcome
Counterculture.
back doesn't have any R's in it.
My version does. It does.
Okay.
Or maybe it's slurring because I'm tired. That could be the same thing.
Okay.
Welcome back to
All right.
Counterculture.
Welcome back.
We are trying to challenge you to do some things against the norm.
Okay.
Think differently.
All right.
We are in Luke chapter 16.
Yeah.
Super familiar. How about if you read verses 10 through 13 for me? How about if we start there?
Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The Pharisees who loved money heard all this and were sneering at Jesus.
Yep.
That's it. Okay.
Read right to there.
Okay.
So when we read this, we've heard this a lot, right? And we use this in churches a whole bunch. And again, Jesus ends it with the whole you can't serve two masters, you can't love God and love money, right? But when we talk about this whole area of being faithful in a little and being faithful in much, there's an attitude that goes with this, right? So it's not just about us trying to make people content with a little, like you should just be happy with the little bit that you have, and you should do great things with that, and then God might give you more, right? It's the whole attitude of us being content with what God has given us, and where God has put us in life. Like, be faithful there, and then, hey, maybe you'll get more. So we live in a world that contentment is a hard thing. You and I serve as pastors in relatively small churches in comparison to, other churches.
No, mine is. It's small. It's just small, and I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with it, but I'm okay.
No, mine same way, right?
Yeah.
It is hard sometimes, this whole battle at being as faithful with the little as you would be with the more, right? So as we challenge people, we look at people and say, our culture is constantly going to be encouraging you, almost demanding. There's something wrong with you if you're not just trying to always get more and more and more and more and more. How do we challenge people who are listening not to be apathetic about the little? Well, this is all I have, right? So this is what we got. But to be content in handling the little, doing something with the little.
I think the first thing that we have to consider is the wanting more. I had a prayer warrior in my church, Miss Bonnie, who when she would pray sometimes, Lord, we want more of you, more.
Mm-hmm.
And she did not have a lot of means to her at all, but she wanted as much of Jesus as she could get. And at the end of the day, so in answer to your question, we have a lot of people today that, was it Howard Hughes, how much money is enough, a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it is always interesting, this whole Jesus talked about money more than he talked about just about anything else. Talked about salvation, the relationship with the Father, of course, but on these little topics like this, because money is such an issue. As it said, the Pharisees loved money.
Yeah.
They didn't love God. They loved money, and it's easy to get into that habit, and to fall into that pocket. And our attitudes toward money are interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a poverty mindset. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. And God is a God of abundance. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and you will soon too as you get more calves
Very
coming.
close.
But and we said, well, I grew up with the idea that, well, if the people that have money, that's all they think about. No, they don't. People that have money don't think about money because they got it. They don't have to think about it.
Nope.
Because my home, it was always, well, we don't have enough. You were always thinking about money. And I know people that they'll go to Home Depot or, well, we saved a couple bucks. Yeah, but we spent an extra 5 hours fixing the thing because it didn't work, and someone brought back that thing because it didn't work. But we'll make it work. I can always make more money. I can't get more time.
True.
But we were just talking about it in prayers. The older we get, the more perspective I think we get. And I think that's also on money, and it's a big issue today, obviously, in our country, and money's the big issue on everything because people don't have enough to even buy groceries. But it's always interesting to me, and I've always said this: people will find the money for the things they want.
Yep.
Well, I can't afford to tithe, Pastor, but I bought this car, or I love, we've talked about, well, I bought a new coffee maker, so I brought the old one that's not working so right to the church. When we prioritize and put God first in our finances, in our time, the rest will fall into place. And I don't, how do you convince people of that? They have to just step out on faith and figure it out on their own. Mm-hmm. And the one area that Jesus says, test me in, has to do with money. But we don't want to test him in it. We don't trust him with money. We only trust him with other stuff, and we don't even do that. We were talking about the people that, I heard a guy preaching today on the way, and that's where I heard he was talking about people will mock you for having a Bible on your desk at work or whatever, but then as soon as mom's in the hospital, you're the one they come to and say, hey, would you pray?
You're the first number.
Yeah. And so we got to just decide and realize what are the most important. I just heard something I read something this week. Ben Affleck, who's got him and his ex-wife and his wife and everything else, they got money coming out their ears, but his son they were at some shoe convention or something, and his son wanted these $6,000 shoes. And Ben said to him, he goes, well, Dad, we got the money. He goes, no, I've got the money. You don't. And I thought, awesome. I don't care what Ben Affleck does, but that was good parenting.
Yep.
No, it ain't yours.
We do.
We do not have money. I have money, but you do not. He goes, you're going to have to be mowing a lot of lawns, which was encouraging that the guy went back to his roots to say, wait a minute, I had to work for my money.
Yeah.
And you do too, and that's not a bad thing. And so, which is one of the problems today I understand there are some people that do need assistance, but many times it's not money that many people need. It's a little bit of wisdom.
Yeah.
To say, wait a minute here, how many kids, I'm sure Timothy never did this because Timothy was perfect, but I need that, Dad.
I think it's like once or twice.
Nah, I don't think you need it. You want it, and you know what? That doesn't always go away. Doesn't always go away. I was getting my oil change one day, and this guy was in there, and he was pontificating about, you can't find a good used car anymore, so I bought my son a new one. And I'm sitting there thinking, I bought my car used, and it's pretty good, Oil
I found one.
I found one, yeah, and it's just, and so when he left, the guy that changed my oil, he goes, that was about him, not about his son.
Yep.
Yeah, I want my son to drive. Look at what I did. Yeah.
So is the problem, again, these verses talk about being faithful with the little.
Right?
Not just be content with the little, we can want more.
Yeah.
But what we do with the little, it matters to God.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I think sometimes in church world, we look at people who are struggling financially and we just immediately assume that they're making bad choices, right? Like we just assume that that they could be doing better, they could be doing more. Well, what if they're in a place where they're actually being faithful with the little, waiting for God to bring the increase?
Yeah.
So some of it seems to me like even in the church world, we need to do a better job at telling people and teaching people, be faithful. That's all that God calls you to be. So, been in churches before where a small group would be a very small group. Hey, got one or two women who want to do this, one or two men who want to do this. And then you got the churches where small group is 20, 30 people. Yeah. And so saying to the person who has the one or two, just be faithful with those one or two. Yeah. And God will add to it, right? Or give you other opportunities or all kinds of things. But I think sometimes we take these verses and we try to manipulate God.
Well, and we've mistaken bigger is better.
Yep.
Bigger is not everything. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not everything bigger is better. I just listened to a podcast this week regarding church. Many people say, "Well, we're a small church, but we're faithful." But they're a big church, so they must be just all concerned about money, and they're not spiritual. Faithful. They're not very spiritual. No, that's not true. The big church can be very spiritual and faithful. And the big church can be, it isn't about church size. Yeah. No, to sit there and say, well, we're faithful, that means you're probably a little bit lazy too. Yeah. And you don't want to go out and try and evangelize and encourage people to come to your church. That's not always the case, but in some cases it is. And we can use those excuses. Well, Paul said, well, I know what it is to have plenty, and I know what it is to be in want. And I've learned whatever situation I am to be content. Yep. And we got to be careful because we can build our empires, and we can let God say, "Let me bless you. Let me bless you. Let me just. Here's what I've given you. Be faithful with it." And maybe so. Well, I have been faithful, and God hasn't. Let me have more. Maybe because you're doing such a good job where you're at. He's like, I don't need you to do that over there because you're doing really good.
Maybe that's what he wants.
This little situation right now. Yeah.
Well, and again, we look at faithfulness, and if the end game is I want more, so I'll take care of this. That's in there. Obviously Jesus is talking about that concept, but the idea is there's more than for a church. There's more to faithfulness than just we continue to have our 10 o'clock Sunday morning service. Yeah. And if you're just continuing to do a 10 o'clock service and you want people to just show up to that, you're not being faithful in the other aspects of taking care of people.
Exactly, yeah. So this being, and the whole point here, I don't think the point here is about money.
No.
Because it doesn't say the parable of money. It says the parable of the shrewd manager. And leveraging what God has given us and say, wait a minute, God's helped me with this. He's provided this. I need to be faithful with this. Yep. And whatever it is to do what we need to do.
Different aspects. For some churches, God has given them an abundance of children's workers.
Yes.
So work with the children, work with the youth, work with the music, work with the teaching, work wherever you need to be.
Yeah.
The key is,
is trustworthiness.
Be faithful, be trustworthy, right? And again, that goes against our culture today, which just says, do whatever it takes to get more. God says, be
and eat,
faithful.
Drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. So,
Yep.
All
right, well, we're going to let you chew on that question. Are you faithful with a little, which is going to allow for God to bless you with more? Yeah. Or are you just focused on wanting more?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're missing out on the little.
Yep.
Chew on that. We'll see you next time right here.
Grace and peace.